Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for September's Reliability and Security Oversight Monthly Update. Today is September 19th. It is 2 p.m. Mountain Time. Take a quick look at our antitrust policy. All WECC meetings are conducted in accordance with the WECC antitrust policy and the NERC antitrust compliance guidelines. All participants must comply with the policy and guidelines. This meeting is public. Confidential or proprietary information should not be discussed in the open session. This webinar is also being recorded and it will be publicly posted. By participating, you give your consent for your name, voice, image, and likeness to be included in that recording. We strive to ensure all the information presented today is accurate and reflects the views of WECC. However, all interpretations and positions are subject to change. If you have questions, please contact our legal counsel. Again, I'd like to welcome you to the monthly Reliability and Security Oversight Update. I'm Travis English, WECC Senior Training and Outreach Specialist. Maylee Cook is out of the office today, so I'm filling in for her. We'll take a quick look at some of the things coming up in today's hour. We've got a cold weather update by Curtis Cruz. We'll get some IBR updates from Abby Fellinger and Mark Rogers. And then our standards department will give some standards updates and standards feedback with Steve Rueckert and Donovan Crane. And then we'll bring Abby Fellinger and Ruchi Shah in for a registration form update there as well. With that, we'll take a quick look at some of the upcoming events that we have here at WECC. We invite you to join us on October 2nd, 11 a.m. Mountain Time to join the Reliability in the West discussion series. Next month, we will be talking about large loads. We've been talking about large loads in the Western Interconnection. This time, we'll be taking a look at some of those large loads and data centers that we've seen back east in the Virginia, Maryland area. So we'll have some commissioners on from the East Coast as well as some other utilities as well, and see what they're doing to solve some of those issues that large load is presenting here in the Western Interconnection. Then we've got our enforcement fundamentals. That's coming up October 28th. It is the last one of the year. It will be offered in Portland. Oh, sorry, yes, in Portland, it's happening October 28th. So Portland, Oregon, before our Reliability and Security Workshop that's happening October 29th and 30th. And that's going to be in Portland, Oregon. Seats are filling up fast for that. The agenda is also available on WECC.org. I believe Megan just shared it in the chat for you as well. Hopefully you'll be able to join us. We're looking forward to seeing everyone there. And then mark your calendars for November 5th and 6th. We'll be hosting WECC's Grid Fundamentals course. This version of the course will be offered virtually, so we invite you to share this with coworkers or other folks in the interconnection that might want to learn about the fundamentals of the power grid. So mark your calendars, November 5th and 6th. All right, as promised, our first presentation is Curtis Cruz. He's the Senior Technical Advisor here at WECC, and he'll be giving us a cold weather update. Curtis, take it away.
All right, hopefully you can hear me. Thank you, Travis. Certainly appreciate that. Again, Curtis Cruz, Senior Technical Advisor. That beautiful blue sky behind me is Colorado. I'm here on my final walk down on my new house. I'm moving from Texas. So just to give you an idea, if a horse whinnies in the background, it's not mine. But we are talking about cold weather, and I think it's one of the more critical risks that we have out there. I think it's great that WECC have asked for this to be a standing item. I wanted to point everybody to the small group advisory session frequently asked questions. Please make sure that you're aware of where those are at. If you go out to the compliance website on NERC, you do the compliance one-stop shop, you select there, there's a frequently asked question button that you can select and poll those questions. Internally, I can tell you we are working on training internally. I know there's some rumors out there about HVAC systems and how they're used. I want to be clear, we've got a real good answer in the frequently asked questions. We're re-emphasizing it to staff. Across the ERO, we are doing that as well, working on some training for all the auditors, just not WECC. So it's important that we lean on some of the small group advisory session questions and answers out there. Please make sure you know where those at. I can send it to you afterwards. if somebody doesn't beat me to it. The second issue, EOP 12-3, well underway. If you're familiar with that, the FERC order on June 27th directed some changes. I'm on that team, so I'm living the dream. It's fantastic to get great input from folks, you know, David Lemons, Jeb Erickson, several folks, Ruchi, have been providing some very good advice and information. That is fantastic. I can tell you from my perspective, it's very good to reach out, have that understanding, and get the right words. Right now, I can tell you there's a CAP extension process that's built into that standard, the 12-3 draft at this point, and why? That's because FERC ordered it to be so. And we're working on that. I'm working with the ERO Enterprise to make sure that's available. We're going to try to post it with the first posting of the standard. Understand I can't talk on behalf of the ERO or NERC in that respect, but I've been editing that paper quite a bit and working with those staff quite a bit. But that's really about it on the update at this point. We're doing real well. We have another meeting tomorrow. We have a couple other in-person meetings, one before the end of the year and one after the end of the year. But as that standard comes out, if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out and supply some good constructive comments. We're certainly listening on this side. And that's all I have for today. I certainly appreciate it.
Great. Curtis Cruz, thank you so much for joining us and sharing that cold weather update. Congrats on the new place in Colorado there. Not seeing any questions coming in for you for the chat, so appreciate you joining us. And to our participants and attendees today, feel free with any of today's presenters to add questions into the chat or use that raise your hand feature and you can ask questions of today's presenters. Curtis, again, thanks so much. We're going to turn now to the IBR registration initiatives update, and I'm going to turn it over to Abby Fellinger, Senior Registration and Certification Engineer here at WECC, as well as Mark Rogers. He's the Senior Technical Advisor in our Registration and Certification Department here at WECC. So Abby and Mark, I'll turn it over to you.
Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Abby's given me the pleasure of doing this one, and she's going to take care of the other part. So thank you, Abby. And first, let me just say this. For everyone, the entities, the TOs and BAs, we greatly appreciate filling out the request for information. And, you know, the last day is tomorrow, September 20th. We have gotten quite a bit of great data. So we look forward so there are some folks that still need to turn in their data, and they've assured us they will turn it in tomorrow. So we're looking forward to that. As far as the IBR registration initiative update, we are moving forward with a plan with NERC to validate the information that you guys have sent for the entities that are connected to your system that fall under the new criteria. We'll also use the EIA data that we originally had, and we're updating as we go along, and to do some little cross-checking and validation. And once we establish a firm list, then what's going to take place somewhere around November 1st, the ERO will have a webinar. That webinar, we're working through the details right now with NERC communication and all the regions communications. And that webinar will basically be a walkthrough of how NERC works, how the regions work, and hopes that we'll have some folks who are new on the call. We also will be discussing another RFI that's not any different than what you would get if you added an asset to your current registration and the interaction you have with WECC. But what this is going to be is to have a uniform approach and consistency. All the regions will send it out at the same time, somewhere around December 1st of the year. That's again what we're planning. We're still working out the details. And what that RFI is basically, it will include the new asset verification form that are for Cat 2 assets. And we'll be asking you the same questions that we ask now. Please provide us with a one line. Please fill out the MVA on the asset verification form. Same things that we do on a regular basis. And then that'll be an ongoing process really throughout the rest of the project timeline with NERC. And of course, that's May 1st, 2020, May 15th, 2026. So right now, that's all I have. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to contact Abby or myself at WECregistration.org. Registration at WECC.org. Got that backwards.
Right.
Thanks so much, Travis.
All right, Mark. Hey, thank you so much for that update there. Again, it's registration at WECC.org. Should you have any questions for Mark or Abby? We'll give it another moment here and see if anyone has questions for the chat. All right, Mark, it looks like you might be off the hook today. So thank you again for
no questions
sharing
for
that
IBRs. Okay.
Thanks again. All right, next up, I'd like to bring in Steve Rueckert. He is our Director of Standards here, and he's going to be giving an update on standards. So Steve, take it away.
Thank you, Travis. Can you all hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Good.
Thanks.
Go ahead and go to the next slide. A couple of these slides are going to look familiar because they're the ones I used last time I did this. And this is one of them. We're going to cover, first we'll cover current WECC activities, then we'll cover current NERC activities. It'll be all at a high level due to the time allotted. This is only a 1 hour call. We could spend an hour probably on each one of these projects. So this will be pretty high level. Go to the next slide. This is something new. The WECC Standards Committee is comprised of 10 representatives, one from each voting segment. And the voting segments are the same as the NERC voting segments. We even define that in our process manual. That way, if NERC changes their voting segments, we don't have to change anything. We just change with them. But since there's 10 and it's a 2-year term, 5 segments are offset by 1 year to the other. So 5 of the 10 segments close every year at the end of the annual meeting, which was yesterday. And so earlier this year, we sent out a notice that segments 2, 3, 5, 6, and 10, their terms would be ending. And I've got it here. Segment 2 is RSO, ITO. Segment 3 is load serving entities. Segment 5 is generators. Segment 6 is brokers, aggregators, or marketers. And segment 10 is regional entities. And all 5 of the representatives agreed to serve another 2-year term. And in our process manual, or our charter, it states that if there's one and only one candidate, we will not hold an election. And since all 5 representatives agreed to another term and there were no other nominees, all 5 were just included to serve the next 2 years. Subsequent to that action, Dana Cabell from Southern California Edison announced that she was retiring after 41 years. And unfortunately, that leaves SBS 3 load serving entities without a representative. The WECC Standards Committee has sent out 3 nomination notices, and to date, we've had no takers. So I would urge anybody that's on this call, if you work for a load serving entity, or if you know somebody that works for a load serving entity that might be able to devote a very small amount of their time to being on the WECC Standards Committee, it would help us. We have probably between 4 and 6 meetings a year. They're all virtual, or they have the virtual opportunity. Some are held in face-to-face as well. And I would say they take 30 to 45 minutes at the most. So other than the prep time, they really don't take that much time. So there's our 4th plea. And we'll probably send out another one very soon. Go to the next slide. Current WECC projects. this is somewhat updated. Project 142 is to retire in its entirety BAL 002-WECC, which is our contingency reserve standard. And the WECC regional standard requires a sufficient amount of contingency reserve, but it also requires a significantly higher amount in some cases than the NERC BAL 002 standard. And so we've tried several times to retire this standard. And each time FERC has said, no, that's lowering the bar. So this effort again could be a tall hurdle. FERC may consider this lowering the bar. But the drafting team has identified some very good reasons to move forward with this retirement. They're meeting as we speak to discuss their efforts. And I think that they may have a chance. You know, the one thing I pointed out to this drafting team was don't expect the WECC staff to do a major amount of the lifting on this effort, because if FERC is going to consider lowering the bar, it probably doesn't look good for a regional entity to be championing that. So it's the drafting team that we're saying, you got to come up with a solution. This next one, WECC 153, this is a repeat of the last update. And it's really just a consolidation of the 11 WECC interchange criterion into a single document. The only reason I left it on here was because it becomes effective October 1st. So that's just around the corner. There were really no substantive changes to any of the 11 criteria, but they were just put into one document. So instead of having 11 separate documents you have to look at, there's one. Of course, it's bigger because it's got all 11 in it, but that also helps us in our 5-year review. We only have to do that once every 5 years instead of, I think for the past 13 years, we've had at least one interchange criterion to do a 5-year review on. Consolidation, as I said, there were really no substantive changes. The ballot pool approved it by 100%, and the board approved it in June. So it becomes effective October 1st. And then there's the newest project we have is the 5-year review of the WECC PRC 006 criterion for under-frequency load shedding. We sent out, the SAR was approved by the Standards Committee. We sent out a nomination form for drafting team members, and I reached out to a WECC employee who was on the under-frequency load shedding review group, and we got 2 nominees and the WECC person that I reached out to. So we only have 3 drafting team members that have been approved. We're seeking additional drafting team members. So if there's anybody that would like to be involved in that review of the criterion, it's basically there to help the registered entities comply with the NERC PRC 006 under-frequency load shedding standard. And as the SAR states, no changes are needed is an option to come up with. But if there's sections, and I believe there's certain people that think there are, that could be clearer, that could be enhanced, we want to do that. So again, if anybody's interested in joining this drafting team, please let either me or Shannon Black know. Next slide. Okay, this is probably kind of a leftover from last time too. NERC still has 24 active or new projects posted on their standards under development page. They're prioritized as high, medium, or low, and basically anything that's been mandated by FERC in an order or the NERC Board of Trustees directed action to be taken, they're prioritized as high. Any of the other projects are low or medium. And since I was just at the Standards Committee meeting yesterday, I did not get a chance to up this slide. This says low and medium projects may not be addressed until next year or the following year. We were told with no uncertainty that low and medium projects will not be addressed until at least 2025. So keep that in mind. If you want to see the prioritization, there's a link to their standards under development page where they've broken them out as high, medium, and low. Next slide. This is probably, the first one's probably not actually correct because it says recent NERC ballots. And the Reliability Standard Development Plan, which basically says what the projects for 2025 through 2027 will be, didn't recently close. It closes tomorrow. So anybody that's got any last minute thoughts or hasn't casted a vote or whatever, you know, consider jumping on there if you're in the ballot pool and voting that way. The next one is 2023-02, which is the analysis and mitigation of bulk electric system inverter-based resource performance issues. That's a mouthful. That ballot closed on the 13th of this month. It received, this one was confusing because they balloted this a month ago and it received like a 76.11% approval. But they got some comments the drafting team felt like would be good to include or clarify. And since they felt like those changes were substantive, they had to ballot it again. And that ballot, as it says here, closed on September 13th. And the approval rating actually went down by about 7% to 69.73, 6.5 to 7%. I think there's several reasons for that. NERC noticed that some people that voted in August did not vote in September. And one of the suppositions is because it passed in August, people thought this September vote was what NERC calls a final ballot. And in the final ballot, you don't have to vote again unless you either want to change your vote or you didn't vote in the prior one. So there were some people that voted in August that possibly could have assumed they didn't need to vote again because they saw some of the approval votes go down. They also saw an increase in negative votes. And we know there were several entities that changed their vote from positive to negative. So that caused the reduction in the approval. And so the risk now is if NERC goes ahead and runs a final ballot on this, I think somebody did the math. And it says only 4 individuals would need to change their vote from affirmative to negative. And this thing would fail. And if it fails, it's got to start all over. So I encouraged NERC at the Standards Committee meeting yesterday. They did a great job of explaining this. And I don't want anybody to think I'm saying they didn't do a good communications job because they did. But there's still a possibility there's some people out there that felt like, I don't even need to vote. And so I encouraged them to say, you know, there might have been this misconception. If you want to vote in the final ballot, because you didn't vote in the last one, you can. And that could result in, if the people that voted affirmative last time, if they didn't vote, that you could assume they wanted to keep their affirmative vote. So if they vote affirmative, that may help this thing to move forward as well. And just to note here, WECC voted affirmative, but we provided comments and said, hey, if you're going to put another ballot out, or if you're going to modify this in the future, here's some stuff for consideration. Next slide. This one's pretty straightforward, Project 2020-06. And for people on this call that maybe don't know, the WECC project numbers just started out with WECC 0001, and we're now at WECC 0155. So we've done 155 projects. NERC numbers their projects based on the year and then the order in which those projects were introduced. So 2020-06 was the 6th project introduced in the year 2020, and it was verification of models and data for generators. The final ballot closed just the 12th of this month, so 1 week ago. It achieved a pretty high approval rating of over 92%, and WECC did vote affirmative in that one. The next one, unfortunately, I think this was PRC, I don't know, 2023-07, Transmission Planning Performance Requirements for Extreme Weather. Oh, okay, no, it wasn't. The ballot closed 822, and it only achieved an 18% approval, which is really low. WECC did vote negative with comments, but when I see such a low approval rating, perhaps our negative vote with comments was the appropriate thing to do. And I think Curtis mentioned this a little bit. The drafting team met last week in Salt Lake City. A new version of this standard is going to be posted in early October with a shortened ballot window. So I would encourage people, when this gets posted, look at it, vote, and comment. I think it's on another slide, so we're going to cover it now. Let me go to the next slide. Okay, this talks about the NERC Standards Committee that was held just yesterday. So I really had no chance to update this slide because we didn't get home to late. There were multiple agenda items, but there were only 3 action items for the Standards Committee to accept. The first 2 action items sought to add supplemental drafting team members to 2 different drafting teams. There was a commenter, but I'm not sure they understood that these were supplemental drafting teams. So I think they may have thought this was the drafting team. So there was quite a bit of discussion on one of these items. And even an alternative motion was brought forward. But in the end, both motions, as shown in the NERC agenda, were passed by the Standards Committee with virtually no opposition. And then the last approval item, it was pretty straightforward. It was just to post a draft of a standard, its implementation plan, and the non-binding polls for the VRFs and the VSLs, I'm sorry. One thing that was a little unclear when you first read it was the project talked about Val 007 and Val 008. And the drafting team in its development of those standards thought it would be beneficial to modify TOP 003 and its implementation plan as well. And so that's what they were seeking, because we'd already given them approval to post Val 7 and 8. And so there was some discussion just trying to clarify confusion, but in the end, this request to post this for comment ballot and implementation plan was approved. And it was clarified that this would be posted at the same time as Val 007 and 008 to avoid the potential confusion. If you want to see the entire agenda packet, here's the link for it as well. Next slide. There's really, at the time I put this together anyway, there were only 2 upcoming NERC events, and they were comment and ballot windows for the 2 projects you see here. And one, the ballot opens on October 1st and closes on the 10th. The second one, the ballot window opens on the 4th and closes on the 15th. And I think the next slide's going to probably cover what I would have said here otherwise, so go to that one. Yeah, this is important. And I should have probably put these in a different order, but please vote. I've had a lot of people approach me over the years and say, I think standard whatever is bad. It's missing this, it's poor, you know, it's got holes. And I asked them, did you vote? And they said, well, no. Like, well, okay. If you don't give us your thoughts, we don't know. So first of all, please vote and please submit comments. And if you vote no, you must submit comments, or they will not count your no vote. They'll basically just toss it. But I'd like to point out, if you agree with something, the comment formula is just, do you agree with the changes, or do you agree with the changes made in R1 or whatever? You can say yes or no. And we've had instances in the past where people that completely support a proposal and agree with everything just don't comment. And so the drafting team doesn't know the level of support they have. The only people that have commented are the ones that are in disagreement. And so the drafting team takes their comments and changes it. And then the next time they post it, they get a whole truckload of comments saying, why did you change this? We supported it. So even if you support it, please comment. And as I said, your voice and opinion helps the drafting teams to develop better products, to know if they've got it good enough, to know if they need to make changes or not. Next slide. I think that was it for me. I didn't have my question and answer, so I don't know.
Yeah, Steve,
Travis,
we're
if
gonna.
there's any questions.
I've got a couple questions that have come in for you. So this question came in, and it's about participating in the balloting and commenting. This user says, about how many entities participate in the balloting and commenting process? Has the number of participants dropped recently with the large workload for standards projects right now? Has that dropped? Have you seen it drop?
So Travis, that sounds like a couple of different questions,
Yeah.
the process and the number. And first off, I'll cover the process first. Whether it's a NERC standard or a WECC standard, an announcement will always be made that we're forming a ballot pool. And a ballot pool can only consist of entities that are in the ballot body. And the ballot body is people that said, hey, I'm eligible for this segment. I want to vote. Whether it's NERC or whether it's WECC, they're vetted to make sure that they are eligible for that segment. And then to vote, you have to be in a ballot pool. And the ballot pools are developed because there may be an entity, rather than just, you have to have a quorum to have a vote even count. And if there's entities that don't care and aren't going to vote, if we just went off the ballot body, they'd never make quorum. And so they put these ballot pools together of individuals or organizations that are interested in this particular project. So you have to join the ballot body, then you have to join each individual ballot pool to cast a vote. Then you do it on the website, whether it's ours or whether it's NERC's. As far as the number of participants, I have definitely noticed, because I pay more attention to the WECC ballot pools. In some instances, they've got smaller. I think to a certain degree, the NERC ballot pools have gotten smaller as well. I just noticed a recent ballot, there were 3 segments, 7, 8, and 9, that didn't have any participants. And if you look at segment 10, which is the regional entities, there aren't very many participants, but 95, 98% of the time, it's all of us. We all vote. There's only 6 of us, so it doesn't look like there's a lot, but that's it for the regional entities. So I hopefully covered the question about the process and answered probably yes, that have I seen the number go down.
Okay,
And
great.
that's unfortunate, because that just leaves more people that can be angry later that it's not what they want.
Yeah, you've got to share your voice there and vote, right? Well, Steve, I appreciate it. I've got one more question, and this question says, does WECC have an Excel spreadsheet or resource with all of the active, retired, and future standards, similar to what NERC has, maybe a one-stop shop Excel?
Well, let me say this, Travis, and I hope I don't get fired for this. We used to, and then we got our new and enhanced standards page, and I don't know if that's there or not.
Donovan, any insights you can lead?
We have, if you go to the website right now and you go to the standards page, there's several accordions on that drop down that will show all of the approved regional standards, approved criteria, and then there's also different accordions that will point to Canadian or NERC standards as well. But as to the one-stop shop right now, that document I don't believe is actively up there, but it's something that we're mindful of that we want to have.
And Donovan, correct me if I'm wrong, I think we used to have, maybe it's down there. We used to have I believe, at least a page that showed all the oh, there it is, standards projects completed. And it goes back, used to have a document, now you have to reach out to us, and we can grab that off your website.
Yeah, there's a document there that you can look at that shows all of them, gives a brief heading of what it may have been. And if you're looking for a document associated with any of those projects, reach out to either Steve, Shannon, or myself, and we can hunt through the piles of documents. We can get you what you're looking for pretty efficiently. So,
Is there a general standards WECC email address that they can contact you at?
at this point, it's just any one of the three of us.
Okay.
Yeah, S Black, S Rueckert, or D Crane at WECC.org, and any one of us can get you.
Good deal. Easy enough there. So appreciate that. And then we've Holly Cheney, who's a member of the WECC steering committee, says they think NERC balloting and commenting processes would be a good subject at an RNS workshop. So something we can put on the back burner and maybe bring to you in the future. So appreciate that feedback. With that,
So I'll just add one other thing to that comment. Over the years, we've tried to make our process as similar as possible to NERC's. We've taken a couple of shortcuts, a couple of things we don't think are necessary, we don't require. But we long ago realized that the closer we are to the NERC's, the closer FERC is to approving ours. Because if they don't, we'll say, wait a minute, you approved NERC's, why didn't you approve ours? So I agree that would be a good topic, and they're very, very similar.
Great. Steve, appreciate you coming on this afternoon and sharing with us. All right, we're going to bring in Donovan Crane. He's the senior engineer in our standards department. He's going to share about standards feedback. So, Donovan.
Perfect. Thanks, Travis. So we're going to take a couple minutes. Recently, and over the last few months, we've been having a lot of questions about, why are we voting the way that we're voting, or why are we commenting the way that we're commenting, especially with a lot of these the FERC orders coming out, a lot of these projects that are high priority that are stacking up now. There's a lot of opportunity to comment, to ballot and vote, and so it's kind of gotten into the eye a bit of people of how we're doing that. So I just want to take a minute to talk about why we're doing it the way we do it and what we're looking for. So can we go to the next slide? So the first question is, what do we want in the standard? And I would take the risk, of an assumption of saying we want probably about the same thing that everybody else that works with the grid wants. We want a good, solid, clear, reliability-based standard that all parties, whether that's regulators or those adhering to the standards, understand, and one that makes the grid more reliable and secure. We want that. You want that. I think that's what everyone wants in a good standard. One of the documents that we look to when a new project's coming out and a new standard's being put out, or an update to a standard is being put out, is we look to a document called the Acceptance Criteria of a Reliability Standard. This is a document that NERC has put together that came out of a FERC order. It came out of FERC order 672, and basically the commission came out and said, this is the criteria that we use to assess reliability standards that come to us. So NERC took a previous document called the 10 Benchmarks of an Excellent Reliability Standard, and they adapted it and took language from the FERC order and lined it up next to those 10 benchmarks to say, this is what we look for when making a reliability standard. And so we look at that as well when that's coming out. Is it following that? Is it adhering to these quality criteria? Is it hitting these 10 benchmarks? And the big ones that stand out that we look at from our perspective is it reliability based? Is it making reliability better? Is it clear? Is it consistent? And is it measurable? These are big points for us that we want to make sure that those are true. I'm going to, here in the chat, if you want to take a look at it, if you're not familiar with the document, this is a link to where you can find that acceptance criteria document that I've been referring to. And just take a look over that as we go through here. But we take a lot of that focus on the reliability based. Does this make the grid more reliable? And then from the oversight perspective, is it clear, consistent, and measurable for everyone? So there's as little question as possible as we can get. So that's what we're looking for, and that's what we want. Can we go to the next slide, please? And so when we're considering our comments, when the standards group is working with our senior technical advisors, working with Oversight, working with the different groups inside WECC, the kind of questions that we're asking ourselves and that we're looking to answer is, does this make the grid more reliable and secure? If this was implemented today, would the grid be more secure? Would it be more reliable? Would it be better? Would this actually help? And if the answer to that is yes, then we try and look for ways to be as supportive as possible to continue that effort. Steve had mentioned, in recent ballots that WECC has both voted yes and no, and submitted comments with both. We want to be able to say, hey, this is good. We'd be supportive of the way it is now, and here's some comments to make it better. This is what we feel would make it better, more reliable, more consistent and clear. And then also there's cases where we look at it and it doesn't quite hit what we need or what we would view as needed for the criteria of those 10 benchmarks. And so, we'll vote no, and then give those comments of this is what we see as the gaps that need to be filled. But really we want to be as supportive as possible and say yes and not so much, no because or yes but. We want that yes and as much as possible. And then we ask, what will make this, this project, the standard criteria, whatever it is, clearer, more measurable, more consistent for both groups, for WECC and Oversight, and for stakeholders and those that adhere to it. It's better for everyone if it's clear, measurable, and consistent across all standards. If everybody understands what that is, that going into whether it be an audit or oversight activities, that there's not a question of, well, we see it this way and we see it that way. The clearer it can be and the more consistent it can be, the better it's going to be for everybody involved with that. So we're looking for clear language both in the standard and across standards. If terminology is being used in this project and different terminology is being used in another project, we'll often submit comments that those need to be brought into alignment. Consistent use of terminology should be across the board. And so when we're approached and say, why are you voting like this? Why are you commenting like this? As we have been recently, the big thing is we're looking at that reliability, the reliability aspect. Does it make the grid more reliable? Will it help maintain that reliability and security? And then, if we see clear, we need more clarity, more consistency, and more measurability on that. Those are the comments we'll give. But that's our focus on that. So as we go through this, this next season, there's a lot of coming from the standards committee. There's a lot of projects that will be going out for various stages of comments, balloting. That there's a lot of opportunity to participate, both for us, we comment and ballot, and for you as the stakeholders that are adhering to that. There's a lot of this that's coming down the line. So if these questions come out, that's a good document to look at, is that acceptance criteria of a reliability standard for what both the commission is looking at and what the ERO enterprise is hoping to achieve on each one of these projects. And so with that, that's what I have. If there's any questions.
Donovan, I am not seeing any questions coming in. If we have any, we'll send them in your direction. Running a little tight on time, so we're going to jump in quickly. We're going to bring in Ruchi Shah from AES Clean Energy. She's the director of NERC compliance there. She's going to be talking about new generation and NERC compliance and registration readiness and getting ready for that. So Ruchi, I'm glad to see you. Welcome back. Take it away.
Travis, do you want me to run the slides or?
We are prepared to, or it's your preference, Ruchi?
Go ahead and run the slide if you want to take it to the next slide, please.
Great.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. As Travis said, I am Ruchi Shah. I'm the Director of NERC Compliance at AES Clean Energy. Next slide, please. So today, the goal of this presentation is to provide a brief overview of AES's process on how we prepare our new generation sites for NERC registration and for compliance. Next slide. So was AES Clean Energy. We are registered as a generator owner and generator operator under AES US Renewables. We are registered in all 6 regions, but WECC is our lead region under coordinated oversight. We only own and operate IBR generation, wind, solar, battery energy storage. That's what we operate under AES US Renewables. We have currently 6,000 megawatt of generation that we own and operate, and we are planning to bring another 3,000 megawatt online in the next few years. Next slide. So as you can see with the growth that AES US Renewables is having, one of the big issues that we were struggling with when we started working on footprint changes registration of new sites was continuing to get a lot of RFIs from WECC for registration on new generation. We understand that WECC needs information to accept our footprint change, and so it was very important for us to make sure we establish a process to get the information appropriately to WECC. So the goal was to understand what does WECC need and to ensure that we have that all compiled in one common package to submit it to WECC so that we can expedite our footprint change process. WECC has what they need, and we can move on to the next project. So in order to get that, we realized once we had a conversation with WECC about what their needs are, is to have a clear internal workflow to get us the package ready. Next slide. So what you see on the screen now, that is a workflow that we implemented across AES Clean Energy to get us a good, concise registration package and to make sure all our sites are compliant as of COD. It starts with when our projects have a draft LGIA. When there is a draft LGIA, NERC compliance team gets contacted, has the draft LGIA. So my team starts reviewing the LGIA. This is very critical for us because it allows us to understand the characteristics of our project and determine the standards that could apply to a particular generation site. So a simple example is if we have a 230 kV generation interconnection line, FAC3 will apply. If we don't have it, that will not apply. That's a very basic example that can tell anyone whether a standard is applicable or not. So once we do the assessment of our LGIA, it allows us to determine what are the applicable standards. The outcome of the LGIA review is the development of the next box, which is the standard applicability checklist. This is a tool that we use to ensure we determine site-specific standard applicables to the project. This is the starting point for us to prepare ourselves for compliance and registration. Once the SAC or standard applicability checklist is built, it is used as a reference to determine the EPC contract. We are consulted when EPC RFPs are getting developed, final EPC contract is getting built so that we can make sure that the NERC scope of work for all the compliance deliverables is appropriately identified. And the timelines for the completion and deliverables to us is also appropriately established. This all is done by referencing the standard applicability checklist. And of course, our EPC contract exhibits are also mostly templated unless there is any additional information in the GIA that is a nuance to a given project. Once we have the EPC signed, the project team continues to construct, design the project. The compliance team doesn't have a big role to play for a year or so while the project is in construction and the work is going on. But as we get closer to the COD, around 6-month mark and closer to 4-month mark to the COD, we start, our compliance team starts establishing coordination meetings with the project team. The goal of this pre-COD meetings is to understand how's the compliance evidence coming along from the EPC to our subject matter experts. And if there are any questions, if there has been any changes to the standards, this is also a good opportunity that we provide heads up if any change orders needs to be performed. This is the time that we start working, making sure that things are appropriately coming along as the project is getting closer to COD. We use the same standard applicability checklist as that was developed earlier to ensure we have all the required documentation. And in the next few slides, I'll show what the SAC looks like. And a lot of information from the SAC then helps us build the complete or helps us build the AES registration checklist, which is more of a list of requirements, information that we want to have in order to be prepared for what we have to submit as a registration package. So asset verification form to be filled out, various documentation like as-built one-line diagram, amended LGIAs, WECC registration questionnaire. To fill and complete all that, we want to make sure we have created an internal checklist, which is more of what information we need to have it with us. So all the information related to WECC registration goes smoothly. All this is done in the time frame around 60 days before we believe our site is going to be COD. And then we submit that package to WECC. The only information that is not given to WECC at that time or is tentative is what is the final COD. That is something we submitted once we know exactly when the project goes COD. Next slide. So we talked about 3 different tools in the previous slide that we use for preparing ourselves for compliance and for registration. Next slide. So the first one, the basic and the most important one, is the standard applicability checklist. As I said, this is the tool that provides us visibility into which standards are applicable. It identifies the requirements applicable to our generating site. It also identifies whom do we need to work with when the standards are getting implemented from the project team. It identifies when we need the compliance deliverables. So do we need the documentation or compliance evidence? Pre-COD, is this something part of a program that we already have? Or is this something we need to collect as soon as project goes COD or inform our SMEs to establish or kick off the follow-up process? It also has a generic list of compliance evidence that we need to collect. It serves as a reminder to our project team, to our NERC team on what are the basic compliance evidences that we want to make sure are in place. We have quite a few compliance templates that our project teams use to complete, and so we have consistent compliance evidence. So this gives us an opportunity to make sure we continue to add more compliance templates and request our EPC to complete those for consistency. And then, as I said, timing of compliance evidence. Next slide. So this is what a standard applicability checklist looks like. It seems overwhelming, but it's really straightforward. It identifies the version of the standard. It has certain filters in it. I've removed the project SME names, but you normally see those filled out, the project team members who are working on the project. The column that is most important that we filter for getting ready for registration is the column which says periodicity. That is where we identify what is needed as of COD, and after that, everything is follow-up, right? So that's what we focus on very heavily when we are completing this or when our NERC compliance team is working with our SMEs to make sure we have everything that we need. And you can see that we have a backfeed date and a COD date as some of our evidences we expect to see by backfeed. So those are the ones that we want to make sure we have in place before certain contractors mobilize out of the site, and then rest comes as of COD. Next slide, please. So the next tool is a worksheet which is tied to the standard applicability worksheet. This is the data sheet. This is the one which helps us complete a lot of the registration checklist. And as I said, this consists of a lot of information that we want to gather as the project is progressing, information that we use it to make sure all the WECC registration paperwork is appropriately filled out. So you'll see it has my favorite NERC functional registration or relationships. We identify those. We identify all the basic information which goes into our SIP2 documentation as well on name, address, things like that. What's the megawatt rating of the site, point of interconnection, point of aggregation, who's our interconnection owner, details on that. And then basic SGIA data that we primarily use to complete our standard applicability checklist, and which also helps us fill out the registration questionnaire that WECC asks for, as well as the asset verification form. So as you can see, the project data sheet really helps us go through and make sure everything on the AES registration checklist is complete, which then helps us put the AES registration package together for footprint change or new registration, depending upon how it's progressing. Next slide. So this is the third tool that we use, which is the registration checklist. So you'll see a lot of redundancy information that finally gets filled out from the project data sheet that is continuously amended, filled while the project is going through construction and COD. Some of the basic information that we make sure that we have from our EPCs are one-line diagram. We learned early on this is very critical, and coming from WECC, I know how important this is for someone who is not so close to the project. It's so important for them to understand how the project is set up, how it's interconnecting, the common point of aggregation, some of the key points that helps with the registration process. So very critical to have the as-built ready provided to WECC. Along with that, at times we have amendments to the LGIA as the project is progressing. And so it's very important that we provide the LGIA, or if there are any amendments, those are also provided. So this checklist serves as a reminder to us. It also helps us be consistent in what we have to provide to WECC so that they don't have to issue additional RFIs, we don't have to do back and forth, and then it expedites the process. This also helps us make sure we are ready with everything that needs to be in compliance as of COD, and then prepares us really well to transition the site to what needs to be done after the project goes COD. Next slide. All right, that's the end of it. I know Abby has additional information, but if anyone has any questions for me, I'm here, and my contact information is here if you want to follow up with me afterwards.
Great, Ruchi. Thanks so much. I appreciate you sharing that, perspective. So thanks for coming and sharing as all these new registrations come online. I want to bring in Abby Fellinger. You've got a couple minutes left here to talk about that registration request form. Go ahead, Abby.
Okay, thank you so much. And thank you, Ruchi, for that overview. I know this information will help our other entities improve their processes as well as streamline them. So thank you so much. Again, my name is Abby Fellinger. I'm a senior registration and certification engineer here at WECC. And I'm going to talk fast so we can get through the slides, which is only 2 actually. So if you don't mind going to the next slide. Thank you so much. During the RSO call back in June, I gave a presentation that focused on the information that WECC needs to do a proper registration, mainly for the inclusion for entities. So that pertains to resources such as wind, solar, and battery. And those are resources that aggregate to a gross nameplate rating greater than 75 and are connected at 100 kV or above. So to help with the timely registration process, we are going to implement a form that is on a voluntary basis, but will help get your application process in a timely manner. So as we all know, facility specifications, they change as a project progresses. So we have been seeing documentation provided to us that has discrepancies. The interconnect agreements not matching up with the GeoGeoP asset form or other documentation provided. So we really need to key in on those documents and to get the correct facility profile information, such as we're seeing entities provide the total net capacity at the point of interconnection that they have in their interconnection agreement as their gross nameplate rating. So implementing this form, which is similar to what AES has, will, I think, help close that loop. So we are going to publish this form by the end of the month, and we'll be encouraging our entities to complete this. So as you can see here, the form has a facility description section and has some example language in blue font to kind of tell you what we're looking for. And then also we have a list of documents that should be provided to us, as well as a section where you can discuss those discrepancies that may be within the documents. And so I'll go ahead and close it out because we're at the top of the hour. But again, please reach out. If you go to the next slide, it has registration at WECC.org. If you want to reach out, we can discuss this document, and it will be available, like I said, very soon at the WECC entity registration link that's on this page. So thank you so much, Ruchi, and thank everybody for their time today. Have a good evening. Unless you have any questions.
Travis, you're muted.
I am talking away into the mute button here. Abby, I was just saying thank you so much, and I appreciate Ruchi Shah coming in and joining us to share as they get ready. But I'm sure you'll be back to share more about these resources and that new page that's coming online at the end of the month. So appreciate that, and just want to say thank you to all the participants for joining us. Have a great afternoon, everyone. Also, mark your calendar. October 17th is our next Reliability and Security Oversight monthly update. Appreciate your time.